please come. I need you. This is I need you.
Te quiero decir que ya que estás implicado conmigo, que digas a dónde está Marta, ya que tú estás en la calle y yo estoy en prisión y se ve que tu actitud es lo más pasota que se puede hacer.
Te voy a contestar. ¿Crees, ladrón, que todos son de su misma condición? Eso es lo primero. Y explícame tú, con el mayor respeto a todas las personas de la sala, ¿quién te cree tú que tú, una persona, mata a una persona? ¿Y quién se va a creer de esta sala? Y con el máximo respeto a todas las personas que hay en la sala, ¿quién se prestaría a ayudar a desaparición de un cuerpo cuando otra persona es el que la ha matado? Porque yo, no.
Estamos en el cuarto discutiendo.
¿En su cuarto?
Sí, estábamos entre el salón, como le he dicho, y el cuarto. Y nos acaloramos, por decirlo así, discutiendo. Y en uno de los momentos pues, había un cenicero encima de la mesa del ordenador. Lo cogí y le di un golpe.
¿Dónde se encuentra el cuerpo de Marta del Castillo?
No lo sé.
Ni sé dónde está el cadáver de Marta, ni le he preguntado a ninguno de ellos dónde está el cuerpo de Marta.
Es algo que no sé ni he sabido nunca.
¿Dónde se encuentra el cuerpo de Marta del Castillo?
Marta del Castillo Casanueva came into the world on July 19, 1991, in Seville, Andalusia, Spain. She was the eldest of Antonio del Castillo and Eva Casanueva's children. 4 years later, her little sister Lorena was born, and 3 years after that, the family was complete with the arrival of Monica. Marta enjoyed a childhood filled with joy and happiness. Marta's parents loved each other deeply and worked hard to build a special home. Maternal grandfather, José Antonio Casanueva, also played a crucial role in this beautiful family dynamic. Marta was known for having the best smile, and it wasn't just her parents who said so. Anyone in the neighborhood could attest to it. From an early age, at 6 years old, Marta was already experiencing true friendship thanks to her sweetness, good humor, and vibrant and fun personality. It was Alejandra Portillo Garcia whom she trusted from that time. Although Alejandra and Marta didn't live nearby or attend the same school, their friendship remained strong. Even Susana, Alejandra's mom, became close to Marta's family, known as the Castillo clan. Marta and her family lived in Tartessos, a middle-class neighborhood in Seville. Around the year 2007, a boy named Miguel Carcaño appeared in the neighborhood. Born in April 1989, he was short and somewhat shy. Miguel and his mother, Felisa Delgado, who had a physical disability, had been left alone by the father. Miguel became an obedient and devoted boy, taking care of his mother in her wheelchair day and night. His older half-brother on his mother's side, Francisco Javier Delgado, had left the house in the La Macarena district years ago. Later, he married Rosa Maria and they had a daughter. Working as a security guard for armored trucks, Francisco Javier managed to save enough to open a bar in the Nervión neighborhood of Seville. However, in the summer of 2007, Miguel's life took a drastic turn with the death of his mother. Suddenly facing loneliness in the family home on Leon 13th Street was overwhelming for the young man. He chose to move in with Francisco, who was divorced at the time and lived in nearby apartments with a gated community, next to Marta's. As an additional coincidence, Francisco's daughter attended Colegio San Juan Bosco, the same school Marta attended. So Miguel had to pick up his niece every afternoon. That's when Marta noticed him and wished someone would introduce them. They got along well and started dating. Marta was 15, and he was 17. He was the teenager's first boyfriend, but he had no serious intentions. In fact, the relationship was so short-lived that it barely lasted a month. Marta soon realized that Miguel was possessive and jealous, which she didn't like. However, even after they broke up, Miguel was already part of Marta's group of friends. Thanks to Miguel, the group expanded when he introduced Samuel Benitez, a fun and affectionate young man. Samuel, in turn, had a younger friend named Javier Garcia Marin, who also joined the group. They would sometimes go together to the Leon Thread house to listen to music and hang out. Meanwhile, Miguel invented a story about his life, claiming that his mother and two supposed sisters had been in a fatal car accident. Interestingly, neither Antonio nor Ava liked Miguel. They saw him as a troublesome young man, the son of a dysfunctional family who had a difficult childhood. Others didn't favor him either, considering him arrogant. The general opinion was that Miguel liked girls a lot and was always with someone. At that time, his brother Francisco was in a relationship with a girl named Maria Garcia Mendaro. In general, the adults in the neighborhood had no complaints about the group of teenagers. Some of them were Cristian, Rocio, Gonzalo, and Alfredo, but their last names and personal details remain private. Their favorite activity was spending afternoons eating sunflower seeds on a bench in Plaza Santa Maria de Ordaz, near their homes. They didn't go out to clubs much, rarely drank, and almost none of them smoked. Alejandra, Marta's best friend, met Miguel and the new guys a year later. During that time, Marta created a collage on her computer with photos of everyone, topped with the motto, "Always Together." She sent it to the group, but with the condition that everyone had to be in it or none at all. Until then, they were all still healthy young people. Also, Alejandra and Marta's passions were more childlike than teenage, like watching Disney movies and spending hours at a mall trying on clothes and taking model-like photos with their phones, laughing non-stop. Marta remained the quiet and especially innocent girl, very close to her parents. According to those close to Marta, she was still in love with Miguel. Although he was involved with different girls, it was noticeable that he felt something special for Marta, to whom he still occasionally dedicated attention. Miguel was often seen riding his motorcycle to pick her up after classes. While he didn't seem aggressive to those who knew him, he had a strong temperament. He wasn't one to get into trouble, but he reacted quickly, without thinking about the consequences or opening a dialogue. Additionally, he used to get angry over trivial matters. When that happened, he would vent his frustration by hitting the walls until his knuckles bled. After a while, he got a job as a janitor at a bingo hall in Los Remedios, where he would arrive promptly at 5 in the morning, around the end of 2008. One day, his boss Juan invited him to have lunch at his house. Juan had a 14-year-old daughter named Rocio, whom Miguel started dating in November. Later, Rocio's mother, Soledad, invited him to live with them. The relationship between Miguel and Rocio, strengthened by living together, happened simultaneously with the romantic friendship he maintained with Marta. Like most girls her age, Marta identified with the 2.0 generation, using new technologies. Through the internet, she created and managed information while maintaining social connections. In her case, Marta primarily used 20, where she shared about boys, parties, plans, and photos in a concise and direct style typical of text messages. This social network, very popular among online teenagers, became Marta's personal diary until January 24th at 2:36 p.m., when she left a comment on a photo of her friend Alejandra. On that rainy Saturday, January 24, 2009, in Seville, Marta left her 12-story building, where she lived with her family, between 5 and 6 in the evening. After telling her mother that she was going to settle something with Miguel, her father Antonio met her in the lobby when Miguel picked her up and only gave her a warning.
Recuerdo aquella tarde, recuerdo el último momento en que la vi, entrando yo en el portal que venía de compras, y bueno, eso lo tengo como una foto fija. Y bueno, y hora por hora, toda la noche. Estaba con Miguel Carcaño hablando y con una moto al lado, y solamente le dije: no irás a ir en moto, sabe que no me gusta, no me gusta por los peligros que lleva el tráfico y una moto tan pequeña y eso, ¿no? Y solamente le dije eso y subí, como un día más. No podía pensar ni por un momento que fuera el último momento que la viera.
However, Marta ignored the warning, and on the red Yamaha Aerox scooter with blue neon lights underneath, she went with Miguel to the riverbank under the Triana Bridge. Later, pretending to give him some CDs, they went to the house on Leon 13th Street. What happened next has been difficult to fully reconstruct, even for the authorities. The only certainty is that once at Miguel's residence, Marta's life took a tragic and irreversible turn. Various versions coincide that the young girl received one or several fatal blows blows. Who or who were responsible has been a mystery over the years. Was it Miguel using an ashtray as a weapon? Was it Francisco after a confrontation over money with his brother? Later, it was suggested that Samuel, Javier, and Maria, Francisco's girlfriend, were also present at the scene. Regarding Marta's detentions, the group took care to cover up, but even today it cannot be determined who acted and how responsibilities were distributed.
Estábamos en el cuarto discutiendo.
¿En su cuarto?
Sí, estábamos entre el salón, como le he dicho, y el cuarto. Y nos acaloramos, por decirlo así, discutiendo. Y en uno de los momentos pues, había un cenicero encima de la mesa del ordenador, lo cogí y le di un golpe.
¿Dónde se encuentra el cuerpo de Marta del Castillo?
No lo sé.
Ni sé dónde está el cadáver de Marta, ni le he preguntado a ninguno de ellos dónde está el cuerpo de Marta.
Es algo que no sé ni he sabido nunca.
¿Dónde se encuentra el cuerpo de Marta del Castillo?
Meanwhile, the hours passed, and neither Eva nor Antonio had any news of their daughter.
La hora de llegada era a las 10:30, 11 menos cuarto, no más. Pero empezamos a echarla de menos a las 8 de la tarde, porque ella tenía su teléfono móvil, no se despegaba de él, y ella daba toques.
Then, Susana, Alejandra's mom, spoke with Eva and realized how strange everything was. Later, Susana called Francisco, who kindly gave her a first version of the events.
Llamé inmediatamente a Eva, fue la que me confirmó que la hora que era, que no había llegado. Ya la verdad es que me pareció muy extraño porque no estaba acostumbrada a llegar más tarde de las 10:30 y además siempre estaba comunicada con su madre. Si yo me parece que la llamaba cada media hora. Era muy extraño.
But determined to find out more, and accompanied by another parent, Eva went to the apartment on Leon 13. At 11:45 p.m., Eva contacted Samuel and told him that Miguel had dropped Marta off at home at midnight. At 12:45 a.m., Antonio arrived at Miguel's house. The distressed father knocked and called at the door, but there was only silence on the other side. No one came out to open it. Therefore, at 2:10 a.m., they filed the first missing person report at the police station. It is believed that around that time, Miguel returned to Rocio's family home. 4 hours later, they expanded the report, providing more details, including Miguel's name, address, and phone number. The third report was made at 1:30 p.m. on January 25th, 11 hours after the first. Samuel accompanied the family throughout this process. Despite the parents' anguish and the 3 reports filed, the police did not start the search immediately. They waited 17 hours to take action. Then, they began taking statements from Marta's close circle. The first official press conference on the matter took place on January 27, 2009, while the family initiated a campaign to find Marta. Samuel and Javier joined the group in searches around the city and helped spread her image. Unlike their 2 companions, Miguel's cold attitude after the girl's disappearance raised suspicions. He didn't return to the neighborhood or call to inquire about the search efforts. Everything was so strange that many believed he knew something. Shortly after, they received calls claiming to have seen the girl in Jerez de la Frontera and Cadiz. At the same time, the 20 social network became a great support for the family and a powerful tool that generated a wave of solidarity among internet users throughout Spain. This resulted in the organization of various events and gatherings. The online impact was massive. When searching for Marta's full name on Google, up to 2.4 million references appeared. Of these, 90,800 were from personal blogs, 4,400 from internet user groups, and more than 400,000 were photos of Marta. Only on 20 there were 1,000 tagged images of her. Many of these photos came from her phone and digital camera, uploaded from her home. They added those that acquaintances sent to disseminate her image through posters with the police number, as well as the photo montages in which her friends asked her to come home. The common word in many of the comments on the internet was hope. This call translated into an unprecedented social phenomenon. From the networks, several pointed to Miguel as the main suspect. On January 29th, 5 days after the disappearance, the investigating judge, number 4 of Seville, declared the secrecy of the proceedings. From that moment on, it became difficult for the media to access information about the the investigations. At that moment, Mariluz Cortez's parents, who had disappeared in January 2008 and found dead months later, visited Marta's family. On that day, relatives and friends gathered in a mass to pray for the young girl's return. Samuel, amidst tears, tried to keep spirits high, insisting they would find her and then celebrate with a grand party. Javier was always close to him, and many heard him express angrily that if someone had harmed Marta, they would make them pay. The next day, 2,000 people demonstrated in Seville under the slogan, "We are all Marta," demanding the young girl's return. In a new demonstration on February 7th, about 3,000 people called for a more thorough investigation of the case. It was at that moment, following statements at the police station, that everyone learned the truth about Miguel's family. Most were stunned, unable to understand why they would invent the dramatic story of the fatal accident. Antonio and Eva, who already sensed something strange about him, were not surprised. On February 13th, the police arrested Miguel and Samuel, the latter as a suspected accomplice. They also arrested Javier, who was a minor at that time. On February 14th, 2009, Miguel confessed to ending Marta's life and then throwing her body into the Guadalquivir River. After the statement, Antonio gathered his daughters, Lorena and Monica, and with the most loving and serene voice possible, conveyed the tragic news to them. The other kids in the group felt they could never overcome the loss of Marta or the betrayal of the 3 detained friends. Alejandra, in particular, was profoundly impacted, devastated by the sad outcome of her best friend at the hands of people she trusted.
Miguel Carcaño ha confesado el asesinato de Marta. Yo colgué el teléfono, recuerdo tirarme en el suelo a llorar. Segundos más tarde me llaman de nuevo, yo ya no sé ni cómo cogí el teléfono y me dicen, Alejandra, dime por favor que te suenan las iniciales SBP. Claro, yo inmediatamente entré en shock, porque yo eso sí que no me lo podía creer. Que una persona que estuvo ese 24 buscando con nosotros, una persona que ha sido capaz de darle la palmada en la espalda a su padre, de ponerse frente a esos padres y decirle, la vamos a encontrar, que esa persona estuviese involucrada en el caso Marta. Y claro, cuando a mí me dicen SBP, a mí se me vienen a la mente Samuel Benítez Pérez.
In the neighborhood, everyone talked about an extremely close friendship, a loyalty taken to the extreme where, to protect Miguel, they betrayed Marta to the fullest. This opinion was shared by the chief of police of Western Andalusia, Enrique Alvarez Liestra. Javier Urra, a psychologist at the Madrid Juvenile Prosecution, mentioned that Miguel's profile matched severe behavioral incontinence. In other words, a young man who, to hide his insecurity, developed an exaggerated and untouchable ego, reacting with impulsive and disproportionate violence when he felt threatened. Psychiatrist Jose Cabrera also provided a profile of Miguel. An intensive search operation was implemented in the waters of the river, involving various forces from port authorities to helicopters, dogs, specialists, excavators, and trucks. Later, Francisco was arrested, and the last charge fell on Maria. Rocio's family was also investigated for their possible involvement or knowledge of the case. However, when it was her turn to testify before the agents, she refused to speak. In a case full of surprises, on March 17th, Miguel changed his statement. According to this new version, both he and Javier attempted to assault Marta, but it was Javier who threatened her with a bladed weapon and then strangled her. Later, between the two, they disposed of the body by throwing it into a garbage container. Throughout this statement and reconstruction of the events, Miguel incurred significant inconsistencies. Nevertheless, for the authorities, this version was the most credible regarding the disposal of the body. Due to this change expressed by Miguel, the search for the body in the Alcalá de Guadaira landfill, which received all the garbage from Seville, began. Due to the time elapsed and the large amount of waste, they estimated they would have to remove about 40,000 tons of garbage to achieve any results. As the investigation continued, finally, Rocio decided to tell what she knew. She claimed to have seen Miguel enter and leave through the bedroom window they shared the morning after the crime. When Maria had to testify, she mentioned that she was only at the crime scene during the early morning to study. She then fell asleep and did not notice anything strange. On the other hand, Rosa, Francisco's ex-wife, offered a version that served as an alibi, stating that he spent the night of the crime between 9:15 and 11:30 p.m. with her and their common daughter. Amidst many versions, Antonio and some media believed in another hypothesis that included details not declared by the accused. Since Juan, Rocio's father, had worked in a biological waste unused crematorium, it was speculated that the body could have been incinerated. 2 days later, on March 19, 2019, Alfredo Perez Rubalcaba, in his role as Minister of the Interior, announced that the search would stop because the Ministry of Economy and Finance was running out of funds. While waiting for the final order, they searched in areas frequented by those involved, as well as in wells, ditches, unused train cars, and 2 apartments on the coast of the Castillo family in the province of Cádiz. They also explored dangerous areas, risking their lives in lonely places without natural light. The operation was suspended on April 30, 2009, pending a court order to decide whether the work should continue. Later, Rocio claimed that Miguel had confessed to her that they had hidden the body in an open field in Camas, Seville. This led to a third search in that area on September 30, 2009, which was unsuccessful. Rocio admitted that she herself doubted the veracity of what he was telling her. Then, Miguel changed his version again, claiming that he did not know the whereabouts of the remains because, in reality, it was his brother Francisco who ended Marta's life. On January 24, 2011, in a juvenile court, the trial against Javier began, facing charges of sexual assault and murder. At that time, he was 17 years old, and the prosecution requested 6 years of internment in a center. Javier testified on the stand that he was not in the apartment on Leon 13 that night. Later, his mother, Rosalia Garcia, confirmed his alibi. 3 months later, the judge announced the sentence. Javier was acquitted of charges of sexual assault and murder, but convicted of concealment, so he would spend 3 years in a juvenile center. On October 17, 2011, the judicial process against the other accused started: Miguel, Samuel, Francisco, and Maria. Outside the court, there were incidents due to intense public pressure, including problems with the police cordon during the arrival of the 4 defendants. The prosecution planned to request 52 years in prison for Miguel, accused of forced intimacy and murder. They would also seek sentences between 5 and 8 years for Samuel, Francisco, and Maria. The trial was long and complicated, with the testimony of 90 witnesses, 15 experts, and the presentation of evidence such as 30,000 phone taps, DNA analysis, and items found at the scene, such as photographs and objects. In her testimony, Rocio confirmed that Miguel confessed to her that he had ended Marta's life, removed evidence, implicated the other defendants, and hidden the remains in a grove in Camas. Additionally, she added another version that directly involved Francisco, claiming that after Miguel's blow, both brothers hit Marta when she was on the ground. Rocio admitted that she initially refused to speak out of fear, as she had been threatened. During the tense process, an audio of a phone conversation between Miguel and Samuel was played, followed by a confrontation between them in court.
Te quiero decir que ya que estás implicado conmigo, que digas a dónde está Marta, ya que tú estás en la calle y yo estoy en prisión y se ve que tu actitud es lo más pasota que se puede hacer.
Te voy a contestar, ¿crees, ladrón, que todos son de su misma condición? Eso es lo primero. Y explícame tú, con el mayor respeto a todas las personas de la sala, ¿quién te cree tú que tú, una persona, mata a una persona? ¿Y quién se va a creer de esta sala? Y con el máximo respeto a todas las personas que hay en la sala, ¿quién se prestaría a ayudar a desaparición de un cuerpo cuando otra persona es el que la ha matado? Porque yo, no.
On November 8, 2011, several media outlets announced a potential new line of police investigation that could almost solve the crime and potentially suspend the trial by incorporating more enlightening data, although not related to the whereabouts of the body. A few days later, the prosecution confirmed the opening of a new line of investigation based on information provided by a new witness. This witness claimed to have taken Francisco to the house where the crime occurred. The public ministry also indicated that the police were continuing to investigate other aspects of the events. Antonio, Marta's father, expressed that he could not endure it any longer, and that on Wednesday, October 23, 2011, he would reveal something that apparently was still unknown. On that date, he shared that it was recordings from a camera in an entranceway showing Francisco leaving his ex-wife Rosa's house. This recording contradicted Rosa's alibi, who claimed that Francisco was with her and their daughter at the time of the events. However, due to the blurriness of the images, they were not accepted. After intense investigations, on November 22, 2011, the forensic police confirmed the presence of Marta's blood on Miguel's jacket. Additionally, a mixture of Miguel and Maria's genetic profiles was found on a roll of adhesive tape, and DNA from Francisco and Maria was found on an extension cord. It is suggested that this cord was used to subdue Marta. Consequently, Maria, who always claimed not to have seen anything because she fell asleep, was accused of desecrating the corpse and covering it up. In January 2012, the sentences were announced. Miguel was sentenced to 21 years and 3 months in prison, with the prohibition of residing in the same town as Marta's parents and sisters for 30 years. Additionally, he had to bear a percentage of the trial costs and pay compensation of $306,500 to the parents and $32,800 to each sister for moral damages. In case of obtaining parole equivalent to good behavior and participation in workshops, he could be released in 7 years. Regarding Francisco, Samuel, and Maria, they were released, causing displeasure among family and friends, as well as outrage on social media, although there was the possibility of appealing to the Supreme Court or the Constitutional Court of Spain. Marta's family announced that they planned to appeal Francisco's verdict and file charges for perjury. Several lawyers and experts expressed opinions on the judicial process and its conclusions. Later, in November 2013, Francisco and Samuel demanded $2,700 from Marta's family for legal costs. Although Lorena and Monica were always active in the search for Marta, they refused to make statements about the case during that time. Their days were difficult, filled with pain. Night after night, dreams returned the image of their older sister, increasingly vague, trying to communicate the whereabouts of her body. Monica decided to tattoo her sister's name alongside a butterfly as a tribute. Lorena, on the other hand, honored Marta by naming her daughter after her in 2015 at the age of 19. In 2017, a local media outlet revealed that Javier, already released after serving his sentence, and Samuel were starting a new life in Rognac, a village in southern France. One worked as a photographic model and the other as a consultant, trying to leave behind the case they were involved in. In their new environment, they managed to integrate with people unrelated to their past, building a group of friends. Additionally, they found a patron who supported their new artistic skills. Despite closing their profiles on social media, using different surnames, a decade after the tragedy that marked their lives, in 2019, Lorena and Monica decided to give an interview. With a choked voice and tears in their eyes, they admitted that their mother always felt unwell, and although their father tried to smile, his sadness was evident. Both agreed that the only thing keeping Antonio going was taking care of them and insisting on the search for Marta. Monica stated that if Marta had been an only child, her father would already be in jail. In 2022, Javier and his mother, Rosalia, admitted that they lied in court by saying he was not in the apartment on the day Marta lost her life. Although they accepted their guilt, they refused to answer more questions. They were convicted of perjury, receiving a 2-year prison sentence and a fine of $1,175 each. Additionally, they had to compensate Marta's family with a payment of $1,600 each. The family's lawyer, Inmaculada Torres, expressed her dissatisfaction with the process, noting that important evidence was not considered. In her opinion, Javier and Rosalia's confession of guilt aimed to avoid witness statements and keep secret what happened that night. Antonio, on the other hand, reaffirmed his commitment to bring Francisco to trial, whom he and his wife suspected as the true culprit for years. Miguel's house, seized due to mortgage arrears, was acquired by Marta's family with the hope of offering it to Miguel in exchange for a confession about the body's whereabouts. However, the request received no response, and they eventually decided to sell it months later. The search for Marta has extended over 14 years, facing numerous phases and leads that, at times, did not materialize. Marta's grandfather, Jose, has been actively involved in the efforts. Recently, Antonio sought the help of Luis Alviar, a georadar technician who used a thermal, multispectral, and infrared camera, along with a drone to inspect the areas considered most likely to find Marta's remains. In any case, if they find something, I would be very interested to hear your opinion, so I ask that you leave it in the video comments. Always with respect for the victim and their family. We can discuss, but always with the respect we all deserve. Again, I remind you to subscribe and leave a like. Good night. Until the next criminal history.